Some argued that he was annoyed by the wagging finger.
Well, look, I am not able to give an answer to this question,
What is your take on this?
to be honest, in the sense that I was sincerely struck. Clearly, I believe that Minister Tajani did well in the immediate term to cancel his mission to Washington to send a signal.
I'll start right away with what I'd call the main issue, namely Donald Trump and his latest remarks. Some argued that he was annoyed by the wagging finger, while others said that maybe he wanted to distract attention a bit from the issues of Iran and the negotiations. What is your take on this?
Well, look, I am not able to give an answer to this question, to be honest, in the sense that I was sincerely struck, and when I said I was struck, I was extremely sincere. I have read the various reconstructions that have been made, indeed with alleged videos that supposedly went viral, in which my attitude might have seemed a bit assertive, regardless of the fingers or not, as well as the reconstructions that would also tell of an attempt to divert attention, let's say, from the progress of the negotiations with Iran. So basically, to bring attention back to the difficulties within NATO, so much so that in the last few hours, as you have seen, the front has widened a bit. It's not just Italian, but also involves other countries. I don't know. I can't say if these reconstructions might be true, and I have already said, and I reiterate, that I do not intend to continue fueling this confrontation, let's say. I think that our bilateral work with the United States must return to normal, as well as what I said yesterday in the Council of Ministers regarding the upcoming appointments. Clearly, I believe that Minister Tajani did well in the immediate term to cancel his mission to Washington to send a signal. But once the message gets across, there is no need, let's say, to go any further, starting right with the reception at Villa Taverna. Well, the traditional initiative that takes place every year on the occasion of the 4th of July, which the government will attend, also out of respect for Ambassador Tita, a figure who works very hard indeed to keep relations between Italy and the United States strong, but in general because I do not change my mind. Okay? I do not change my mind. I am reading many reconstructions about what Italian foreign policy will be now. It will be what it has been for the last 80 years. That is, I do not change my mind about how important it is to keep the relationship between the United States and Europe strong, which is clearly what an extraordinary part of our strength is founded on.
But do you think there could be some repercussions? I saw that some were imagining a tightening of tariff policy or trade-level repercussions for Italy.
I hope not. I don't think so. Frankly, I don't see any backlash. It seems to me that our activities and our relations are indeed going well, even in recent weeks and months, both at the institutional and economic levels. Just as we must remember that Italian exports have grown recently despite American tariffs, proving that our products are very well received by American consumers. Therefore, frankly, I don't see any risk of a backlash. After all, these are two systems with a history of cooperation so long-standing and solid that this isn't something that gets erased or renegotiated over a social media discussion. These are relations that do not start or end based on who happens to be governing the United States, Italy, or any other European country at the time. We need to bring foreign policy back to the depth it deserves, because sometimes we really talk about foreign policy as if it were, I don't know, Temptation Island. I say that to refer to the memes I see going around, but foreign policy is a more complex matter than that.
Will the Iran deal hold? Are you optimistic?
Look, it is certainly a very complex agreement. I remain optimistic. I think that, above all, we must look at three elements that are fundamental in the agreement. The first is the fate of the so-called Iranian nuclear program. That is, we objectively cannot allow the regime of the Ayatollahs to acquire nuclear weapons, nuclear warheads, at a time when it also has amply demonstrated it has long-range missiles. I say not the United States or whoever is closer to the border with Iran, not Israel. We cannot allow it. We cannot afford it. And therefore, on this point, the terms of the agreement clearly need to be clear. There is an issue whereby if we clearly want to build a solid security architecture, no country in the region can or must feel threatened. This applies to Israel, obviously, but it also applies to the Gulf countries, which have been, as you have seen, a target of this conflict, although they were not, let us say, directly part of it, were not directly involved. There is the issue of freedom of navigation, and look, this is a very major issue. It is a very major issue not only because we have seen what happened with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz that impacted the global economy and consequently the European economy and the Italian economy, and therefore obviously we must guarantee the full restoration of freedom of navigation, not only for what Hormuz represents in itself in terms of a fundamental hub of global trade, but for the precedent that control over the Strait of Hormuz entails. It is evident that if we were to allow, for example, the payment of a toll envisioned by the Iranians on the Strait of Hormuz, we would find ourselves catapulted into a world in which every fundamental trade choke point becomes an instrument of pressure against states. It can be used as a weapon. This is something that cannot be imagined, and it is the reason why we have also given our availability, clearly in a scenario of peace, for a mission to guarantee freedom of navigation at the international level, for which, in that case, authorization from Parliament would clearly be needed, but I think Italy should do its part for this. These are the three fundamental issues in the negotiation. I am fairly optimistic, even though I know that the negotiation, we can see it even in these hours exactly, it is not very simple. I think ours must not be static optimism, so to speak. I think that as far as we can, we must lend a hand, both on the diplomatic level and by offering our availability. This is the case I am making to you on the Strait of Hormuz, on a possible mission on freedom of navigation. I can make the same reasoning for what concerns Lebanon, which is a nation fundamental for us, on which Italy has an extraordinary history of work and frontline commitment. You know that today there is a parallel negotiation. The Lebanese president has shown willingness for a direct negotiation with Israel, showing an extreme proof of courage, and I think that this too is an area in which Italy can play an important role. One of the issues that I intend to discuss with Emmanuel Macron in the G2G, in the intergovernmental summit that we have on Thursday, because I think it is one of those things in which Italy and France can work together. So, I will explain it to you today as a comment on Starmer's resignation, and since the British Prime Minister has resigned, in 3 years, I will now see the third British Prime Minister I have known. Nigel Farage, who, as you know, is a prominent figure in British politics, commenting on this, said, "We have become the Italy of a few years ago, meaning we have a prime minister who changes every year." Unfortunately, it is the truth. Now, I always get angry when others talk about us not in the way they should, in my opinion, as a negative example, but it's the truth. Today, we are seen as an anchor of stability in an unstable Europe. Yesterday, we were the unstable Italy in a generally stable Europe.